purpose of this lesson is to discuss some advanced topics, such as the ability to read data from the web, reading text files, the ability to automate some word functions, how to handle errors, the ability to customize the ribbon, and the ability to create add-ins. Excel is able to get data from a large variety of data sources, one of which is actually websites. So we can actually configure a website to be a data source for an Excel spreadsheet. The only catch is that the website must have an HTML table to work properly. If it doesn't have an actual HTML table, it's still possible to pull in data, but you may end up pulling in the entire website, and then you have to programmatically try to find data from that large data set. So it works a lot easier if there's actually a table. To do this, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the Data tab, and under Get External Data, we're going to select from the web. And what it's going to do is it will present to you a limited web browser that we can type in a URL, and then it will display the website to us. Now it's limited, which means some of the newer features may not work. You may receive some errors about the website, about scripts not running. Just ignore those as long as we can get to the data. And then what will happen is it'll place an icon beside any data that we're able to import, and then we can. Now, when the data is imported, it is directly imported into a sheet, and you can import it into the currently active sheet or into a new worksheet. One thing to be aware of is that when we import it, the values are imported, but they're not linked, which means that when we're done, all we end up with is the data at that point in time. They will not automatically update if the website changes. So I want to get some data from the web, so I'm going to go up to the Data menu, and then up here under Get External Data, I actually have one that says From Web, and it'll bring up this little browser, and like I said, it will get these script errors because most of our current sites are not handled very well. It's just a very limited, older version of Internet Explorer that it's actually using. It's actually Internet Explorer APIs that it's using. And so it'll go to your default page, but I want to go to a website. I'm actually going to go to W3 Schools. They have a website on HTML tables. Ignore the script errors, and it will inspect the page, and then it will let us know in a minute what areas of the page that it can actually use. Now you'll notice that we have this little icon up here with the arrow, and when I hover over it, I get the little blue border. That arrow means that that's a section of the page that I can actually select. What I want, though, is there's a table down here that has these users. Notice they have points over there. So maybe this is a website from which I want to regularly pull in data. What I can do is I can import the data into my spreadsheet, and then I can perform tasks on it. So I'm going to click the arrow. It'll turn into a little check mark, and you'll notice that area turns blue. Now when I click Import, it'll ask me where do I want to put the data. And I can put it in an existing worksheet starting at the A1 column, or I can put it somewhere else. So I can select exactly where it's supposed to go, or I could put it in a completely new worksheet. So then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. It will get the data. It's telling you up there at the top that it's getting it. Now, if it's a website that has a lot more data on it, it will take significantly longer for that process to run. But now that I have a data source from the web, I just simply received some information from a website and then pulled it in, and I don't have to retype that data. I just simply link to it. Now, like I said, the catch is going to be that it's not linked data, which means that this stuff will not automatically update. So just be aware of that. That is actually the number 94. It's a literal now. So if I want to perform some tasks on it, if I want to make charts, if I want to use data bars, or if I want to use flags or whatever else, I can do that stuff on it just like any other data that we've imported into Excel. Excel is able to pull in data from any type of text file that contains tabular data. And what I mean by that is things that are going to be comma-separated value files, tab delimited files, or even fixed width files. Now, fixed width files are going to be the ones where the data is stored in such a way that there are what appear to be columns when you open it up in a text editor, but there's just a bunch of spaces between the data. The way that this will work is that Excel is going to read the data in from the text file one line at a time, which means that we must create a loop to read through the file one line at a time. And then what we have to do is we have to do something with the data. So maybe we store it in an array, We could store it in a spreadsheet somewhere, or even in an enumeration if we want to store it in something like that. We can also export data to a text file. So if I've already manipulated data and I have a spreadsheet, I can save it as a text file. Now it's going to be written to the file as a fixed width file, and the system can write one line at a time, which means, once again, I must create a loop to write the data one line at a time to the file. Because Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Access all use VBA as a common language, we actually can automate tasks between these systems, but be aware that they all use different object models. And what I mean by that is, for example, in Excel, we talk about workbooks and worksheets. Word uses documents, so we just have to be aware of the object model for whichever system we're using. We do have to create a binding via the object library. And then if we want to actually use it, even though we do a binding and we have it as an object, anytime we want to reference one of these Word documents, we have to create a new reference to it. So we use the new keyword, and we do something like use WD as new Word document. Then what we can do is we can use the create object to create a new instance of the object, and then each object must be created in Excel before we can actually start using it. One of the problems that we have with VBA is if we start encountering errors with our program, we'll get what are called unhandled exception errors, which are just simply these messages that pop up that say runtime error and then have some cryptic number. They don't provide much information, and the debug button doesn't help the end user at all. So what we want to do is we want to provide some sort of means to provide a better message to the user to tell them, hey, this is what you did wrong. All right, so what we want to do is we want to avoid what are called unhandled exceptions. The unhandled exceptions can cause unexpected results. It's better for us to try to anticipate what problems the user may have and then handle the exception gracefully. It's always better to handle it and present the user with some friendly message that says, try this instead, rather than runtime error 7304. Use the onError go to myHandlerException command, and myHandlerException is just going to be some sort of label to instruct the program how to handle the exceptions. Now that does require the label to have been created called myErrorHandler, and it has to exist in the same module. A very basic version of how to implement this would be, I have a section of code that has some sort of function. I don't know what the function is. Our section of code is going to do something that may or may not cause an error. And actually this is going to throw an error as soon as I try to do anything. So I'm just going to make this a comment just so that you can see approximately how it would work. Okay, so then what we would do is we would create a label for our error handling. So I'll call it my error handler. And then what I did is I just simply created a label, and the label is something that I can tell my program to do something, to go to. All right, so then what I can do is something like message box, you got an error. Hopefully in your code you do something that's a little more friendly than this, but it actually would explain to the user what they did wrong and how to fix it. All right, so what we would do is up here in our actual code for this section, when we're done with all of the other code on something that actually would have gotten an error, then what we can do is we can say onError go to, and then myErrorHandler. And so what this will do is it'll make it where when the program runs, if it works fine, if it doesn't, it gets an error, then it automatically will jump down to this label and do whatever is here. And so what will happen is hopefully our error message here is a lot more friendly than what the user is getting when they see runtime error or something or another. So this is just a way to gracefully handle the error, gracefully handle the exception, and then provide some sort of way for the user to get out of it or explain to them why something didn't work. The ribbon was introduced in Office 2007, and beginning in Office 2010, it's possible for us to actually manipulate the ribbon through VBA. What we can do with VBA is we can do things like change fields, we can hide and show functions, we can run custom add-ins, and we can even add additional functionality to the ribbon that doesn't already exist. The add-ins typically are not going to be created in VBA though. Typically we're going to create them in something like full version of Visual Basic, C#, or any other programming language that's capable of creating the add-ins. The add-ins are stored as DLL files, and then they are added, deleted, and manipulated by the add-in manager. It is possible for VBA to create a custom ribbon menu to contain custom add-ins, but we can still manipulate them through the add-in manager. To get to the add-in manager, we're going to right-click a blank area of the toolbar, and then we can customize the ribbon. And then you'll see add-ins down here at the left. Now, if you're looking at the bottom, it'll say Manage Excel Add-ins. By default, it goes to Excel, but we have other types that we have that are available to us. Most common types are going to be either Excel or COM add-ins. And to actually bring up the manager, you click Go, and it will show to us all of the add-ins that are available to us. Now, we can also browse for other ones, and then we can add them and we can turn them on, turn them off, and determine which one of these are going to be available to the user. In this lesson, you learned that Excel is able to read data from the web, and that we can use VBA to process that information. It's also able to read data from a text file and write data to a text file. And once again, we can use VBA to automate that process. We are able to automate functions in Word and any other Office program. Just be aware that they all have different object models. We are able to handle errors by using the on-error go-to and then whatever the label name is. We're able to customize the ribbon through VBA, and it is possible to create add-ins that can be manipulated with VBA or through the add-in manager.